Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another weekly edition of Redox 5. We missed last week due to the holidays. We hope everybody had a good Christmas and holiday, regardless of
Yeah.
where you were at, that you had your family and friends with you. We're here tonight. This is the Friday prior to New Year's, or the 29th of December, if we're dating this. We've got a great group tonight together. We're missing Dr. Maureen Hayes, who has some illness in the family, and so she's asked to be excused, so we'll miss her. She'll rejoin us next week. I have with me as co-hosts Jim and Ann Glenn from San Antonio, Texas. They can wave and say hello. My name is
Hello.
Hello.
Dr. Lee Osler. I am in the state of Washington, and we've got people coming in from all over the country, the world, to witness the debut of Dr. Barbie Phillips, who is our guest tonight. Will join us on the panel, and we'll have a lively discussion tonight about some of the physical modalities that she deals with and how what we do helps that. We will start with a disclaimer. We are independent associates of a company named ASEA Global. We have a redox-based supplement that we offer to the marketplace that is a cellular health supplement. And so we don't make any claims to treat, diagnose, or cure. Strictly, we are going to stay compliant in our language, and we'll let you make the assumptions from there. But we've all had personal experiences with this, with ourselves and our family, and that's why we're here, is to share this information and to help people get their questions answered and to learn some of the, at least especially some of the medical side, the science cell health side of this. With that, Barbie, we welcome you to our show tonight.
Yep.
You are a chiropractor. I understand that you're in Oklahoma, Fargo, Oklahoma, that you have a
Yes.
All right.
practice there. And you do some split duties between humans and our animal friends as well in helping them be healthy. So I'd like to start off with, unless Anne, you've got something you want to interject with here, but I'd like you to start off by introducing yourself, fill in the blanks. Let us know real briefly your background and maybe even just why you decided to practice healthcare the way you do. And then also, especially, give us the story. Like, what is it that brought you to ASEA or brought ASEA to you? And maybe you can just start with that, and we'll just fill in with some questions and go from there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest tonight. I am very honored. And my name is Dr. Barbie Phillips. Like he said, am from Fargo, Oklahoma. And I've been a chiropractic physician for people and animals for 24 and a half years now. Next year, we'll get to celebrate 25 years. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And um, I started chiropractic from a basketball injury, and that's where I got into the profession of chiropractic interest. But I did take a detour and do youth and family counseling right out of college. But I ended up going to chiropractic school after about a year of that because I needed something that had a little bit more control of the outcome. And so I prayed about it, went to chiropractic school, and the rest is history. So I grew up on a farm and a love for animals. Got my first horse and dog when I was 4 years old. So my love for animals started there. I did think I would want to be a veterinarian, but I knew I would never be able to put animals to sleep. And so God gave me the best of both worlds. I can help people and I can help animals, and I get to see them get well. So it's exciting. My introduction to ASEA, let's see, in 2019 of July, I was working at a dog show in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Kathleen Oliveri is the one that introduced me to the Renew 28 at the time. She walked up to my booth that I had there where I was adjusting dogs, and she was visiting her daughter there and school. And she introduced me to it, and I thought, well, she's a great lady. She was super nice. But I am so science minded that I then just sat it on my desk and didn't do a whole lot with it because I thought, well, somebody else trying to sell something. But it kept looking at me. And I eventually spent 4 months researching it because that's how I do things. And I couldn't find anything wrong with it. I just researched and researched and researched. So I thought, well, she said it was good for wrinkles. That sounds great to me. I'll put it on my face. And the first time I put it on my face, what I noticed was the incredible breathing capacity that my lungs had. And when I look back, now that I know how redox works and targets those most important areas first, I look back at I had chronic respiratory issues from the time I was 9 years old all the way into adulthood. Every November, every February, I would get respiratory issues, and it would last for sometimes up to 10 weeks. And I just was used to it as part of my life. So I was raised on, antibiotics and medications and, cough syrup. I lived on it. I have no idea how I even went through school and did all the things I did, but that was my life. And so it made sense to me that it was going to start working in those areas that I didn't even know needed some assistance. And to this day, when I put that on my face as part of my skincare regimen, the same thing happens every time. And so it's just pretty phenomenal. But in the midst of all of those years, my gut got destroyed, my immune system got destroyed. And that brings around to your question of how I got interested in doing things more natural. I was just sick of medicine and what it was doing to my body. And so I started looking at more alternative type things when I was in chiropractic school, met friends, met people, learned all about types of natural things. And this just fell right into line with what I was already going down the path of. So when I started this, I did the gel in November, and then it was March of 2020 when I started the ASEA, and the journey started from there. I had back issues from injuries from high school basketball, and then also horse injuries right before I got out of chiropractic school. And that was really my target when I thought about ASEA. I thought, boy, if this could help me feel better in some way. But it took about 3 years on ASEA to notice a difference there. It started working on my gut got better, which I really didn't know enough to know that's what I should be focusing on, those things. But my digestive system got better. And then my sleep got better, which it had probably been over 10 years since I'd slept through a night. And you think about all the grueling school of the 8 years and no sleep and all the tests. And I think my body was just on fatigue. And so when I got to the point where I couldn't think, literally, I couldn't remember patients' names unless I was looking at the computer when they came in and I looked on there to see what their name was. My brain fog was terrible. And like I mentioned, I couldn't sleep. And so within the first 3 weeks, I did have some heart irregularities that had plagued me that I didn't know what that was, because we were having so many earthquakes in Oklahoma at that time that I thought the trembles were actually from the earthquakes that were going around. And it took me a while to realize it was my body trembling at night when I would lay down. But in 3 weeks, that quit. And that was an aha moment for me. So that was pretty amazing.
Hey,
Yeah.
Barbie, if
Yes.
you don't mind, how much were you drinking at that time? A lot of people are always curious what you started with and how much you were using
I
at
did
the time.
everything wrong. I did everything wrong because supplements all affect me in a negative way. So literally, I started out with a half ounce twice a day because I didn't know what my detox symptoms would be. And then I worked up to an ounce twice a day, and then an ounce and a half twice a day. And I worked my way up to the 4 ounces and the 6 ounces and the 8 ounces. So all I did was prolong the agony of going through the
Well,
detox.
for those that don't know, can you kind of go over what the detox is, or Lee, if you maybe want to address that? Because a lot of people, we kind of call it rebalancing back your body back to normal. But how would you describe to someone you're talking to about the potential of having a cleansing or a rebalancing or a detox?
What I explain to my patients that I introduce this to is sometimes they might get loose bowels, they might get a headache, they might have flu-like symptoms, or they might get a little bit irritable, which is what happened to me. And so those are the types of things that I actually explain to them.
Okay.
Lee might have a little different opinion on that. So,
Well, and to help reduce any of that, we've also recommended people drink a lot of water.
a lot of water.
Not a lot at one time, but be diligent drinker of water throughout the day. As we say, don't be a chug-a-lugger, be a sipper of water throughout half your body weight in ounces of water a day.
Now, would you say that feeling only lasted you a short time, and then when did
1
you
week.
graduate? Okay, 1
1
week,
week.
and then when did you get to the 6 and the 8? Was it a month, 2 months?
I'm going to say that was probably more about 4 months
Okay,
into it. And that's when I really started noticing more things happening, was when I started drinking more. So.
your aha. Okay, great.
And I have had times where maybe I didn't feel real well, or when people around me didn't feel real well. And in order for me to try to stay as healthy as possible, I was drinking 16 to 20 ounces a day to hopefully help my body sustain with all the patients that I'm introduced to that are sick. I try to, keep those levels high, but 8 ounces to 10 ounces a day is where my happy place is right now.
Okay, and
Great.
we just came back from a meeting at home office a couple of weeks ago, and we're really now recommending people do a micro, what Maureen calls a micro serving. So do smaller amounts every maybe 2 to 3 hours. Lee, do you have anything to say on that?
Not really. I can add later, but I'm just impressed with your experience in this. You dove into research, but you were doing a dual study here. You were the N of one. You yourself noticing these things happening in you. As you've introduced this to others, have you noticed that they've done the same thing?
Most people really trust me. I've been in business almost 25 years, I guess, coming up on it. And so people know that I do my due diligence, and there's nothing that goes on my shelf or that I recommend that I haven't researched and I haven't tried myself. If I actually have not consumed it, I never recommend it, because I want to know what it does to the body. So I feel like most people trust me after the years to know who I am, and I feel like most people just go with the recommendations actually right now.
So when you get somebody that comes in, I don't know if that was a
Yeah, do you
for me or what.
Okay.
And they're just new to your office, or of course new to ASEA. How do you introduce the redox molecules? Does it come up because of the crisis they're in, or does it come up for being proactive? I mean, they see your display behind you, which is great. So how do you incorporate this modality, whether it's Renew or the liquid?
That is a great question. So we start out doing of course, our tests on our patient to see what kind of conditions they have. We do our case history, and we go through and find out what's important to them. Once we find out what's important to them and what their health goals are and their health challenges, we try to incorporate at what is called our report of findings, which is anywhere from our 2nd to 4th visit. We go over their x-ray findings and all the different things that we've come up with from our tests, and we come up with a game plan. So we introduce it then as part of our game plan. However, in our office, in our lobby, we have everything displayed, and we do our real people, real stories, interviews, our Zoom calls, and play those for our people to see in our lobby as well. We intermingle those with just some good visual, things off the TV to make it comfortable for people. But that usually at our report of findings starts the discussion. And then we will introduce them. My front desk is very well trained. It took about a year to get her fully trained. So she knows to send information to them. We used to go ahead and let them walk out with the product because people would get excited about it. And we did that during the first year and a half. But I felt like that set people up for failure, because they would, take a bottle and go, oh, it didn't work. I didn't know enough to explain it at the time. So now we go through and we actually have them watch videos, and we ask questions about their understanding. And then if they want to get started, if they're willing to commit to 6 months is what we tell them, because I feel like if you really want to see changes, you have to give it time. And if they're not willing to commit to 6 months, then I don't feel like they're going to do it for the long haul. So we tell them not to waste their money. And so that kind of is a deciding factor of who gets started and who doesn't. Now, once they decide to start, we'll let them walk out with their first bottle, and then we get them set up, for their wholesale pricing or something after that, but they can get started.
If you don't mind me asking, let's back up a little bit with your research that you did. What kind of research were you doing when you first got introduced to Redox? And then maybe if you had someone today come along, how would you ask them to maybe duplicate what you did and maybe speed that process up?
Well, I did what everybody shouldn't do, which is go to Google. And I found good and bad, but I dissected the good and bad apart. And then I found a lot of videos with Tyler Norton in them and from the actual ASEA company. And then I started diving into those YouTube videos. And I literally would stay up for hours and hours and hours at night watching those because I was so intrigued with what I was listening to. And so I went more on that area. Now, what I would tell people to do is to get the information from a reputable associate, of course, because that information is going to come from the company. But then if you're going to do any research, go to Google Scholar, which you're going to get information on that's actually factual. So that's what I tell people to do now.
Awesome.
And there's another great site called redoxmatters.com, correct, Dr. Osler?
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, the book,
Yes.
Redox the Lifestyle. Mm-hmm.
But,
That's great.
that whole research thing is a really interesting side of this. People are clamoring to have the research. They want to see the science. They want to, it's a interesting phenomena. They'll go to McDonald's and other kinds of fast food restaurants and never ask the establishment if they can supply a bibliography of supporting literature as to why their food's good. But yet they will take a supplement and run it around the bases and condemn it because they didn't see what they wanted to see in science or whatever. But the answer to that question, just to kind of head it off, is we don't have random control trials because that would push us really much closer to this being a drug and having regulatory control, with one exception, and that is we're doing structure and function studies. So we're doing studies that show the effects of these reactive agents on cell components, cell processes, pathway genes, transcription factors, epigenetic control of the cell, and so forth. We can show that, we can demonstrate that, and we can talk about its effect, and then it's up to us to kind of connect the dots, right? It's a little bit like saying we have something, and I'm not making this claim, but if we came up with an herb or something and said this product lowers your cholesterol, well, that's different than saying it solves the problem of heart disease. But most people are educated enough to know that, gee, if it lowers my cholesterol, it's going to have a positive effect on heart disease. So they connect their own dots that way. So that's what we're doing with structure function claims, is that we understand, we now have new research showing, for example, that ASEA increases NRF2 levels by a significant percentage. And if you understand what that means, then you'll go, oh, well, then that means, and you can extrapolate from there, which I'm sure is what you were doing, Barbie. Wasn't that what you were doing?
Yes. And interesting enough, I've been doing a lot of studying on epigenetics and senescence of the cells, which is, where the cells stop growing and they stop healing and they stop reproducing and they start dying. And when I read the literature that just came out with the NRF2, and it was really mind-boggling to read through that research, but connect the dots between how that affects our epigenetics, or our environmental factors, our toxins, our foods, our environment, how it affects our process of aging. It was very interesting to think of, redox signaling molecules and how they, could they affect us at the epigenetic level with, just with how they perform. I don't know.
Hey, Barbie,
fit right into that. Yes.
Real quick, explain to people that don't understand epigenetics, what exactly is that, please?
Okay, so epigenetics basically is how our environment molds us. I mean, even our brain can mold to the physical, the chemical, and the social world we live in. And so when you talk epigenetics, this can have an effect on your stress, your memory, your gut health, every aspect. So epigenetics could be the diet we eat. Do we eat good foods with micronutrients? Do we eat junk food? Do we eat sugars? Do we drink pop all the time, or do we drink water? So those things can affect how our body shapes and works over time. Our environment. whether we're around smoke or whether we're around chemicals or paint fumes, and all of that makes a difference too. So we have to think about all these things are shaping and molding not only our brains, but our neurology. It's really important to think about, well, how can we protect our bodies against that? And with the new studies on the NRF2 and how it helps with oxidative stress, this just really was exciting to me on what it does. So,
Yeah.
if we can fire those pathways more to get more NRF2, we can make a change in what our outcome is.
Yeah.
And Lee, you and I were speaking earlier on this topic, and what people don't understand, Barbie, is that stuff we did not just today or yesterday isn't going to affect me today. That it takes a long time before these factors of bad epigenetics kicking in. And Lee, can you maybe touch on what we were talking a little bit about, that the potential predisposition of, my mom or dad or grandparents had this or that? I don't know if this is really appropriate right now, but people need to understand that things don't just, happen right now and you get a bad heart. It takes a long time for the body to develop to that point. And then they go, well, I'm healthy, whatever their age, I have no issues. And then boom, they hit the ground the next day with having a serious condition. So either Barbie or Lee, if you want to maybe kind of touch on that.
Barb, you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you named off 2 or 3 different subjects that all interrelate there. The word epi is the overlay, that we all have DNA. Most of us know what DNA means. The epi is basically the environmental overlay on the DNA, which means that our lifestyle, things that are going on in our life around us, have an influence on how the DNA acts and behaves. And that's what we have control over. I can't control what my DNA is, and if I have a gene defect, then that's pretty much written into it. But I can change how my genes express or how they're activated or when they're activated, and that's the whole point of what redox signaling is about. Redox signaling is the phenomena in the cell where there is a sensing or a detection, capability to sense when there is a problem, when the oxidation state or the inflammation state is getting a little out of hand. It's a little bit like a thermostat on the wall, detecting that the temperature in the room is not where it should be, right? Because it was preset to be at a certain place. And so it initiates a response to that to correct that problem, and then it turns it off after it's corrected it. And so that whole concept of, I call those transcription factors, and if you just wanted an easy term, you could just think of them as a redox switch. Those are the things that we're trying to manipulate and control. That's what ASEA is doing, is it's creating an environment in the cell that on purpose turns on those redox switches that turn on the response, that exercise it, that make it better at being resilient against the threats that are imposed on the cellular environment. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to improve by any means necessary, in any way we can, the resilience or the capability of what's going on in the cell. So we're not susceptible to everything that comes through aging, or because the neighbor next to you sneezed or something like that. And so it's very complex biochemistry. Some of that, there's kind of 2 thoughts in epigenetics. One is, what inheritable gene traits, can I impose on the DNA? But this is more about the environmental presence, what's going on around me and my lifestyle choices. And that's why we talk about this redox lifestyle. Everything that Dr. Phillips or myself or anybody else would, recommend or advocate for somebody is you don't just take pills. This isn't about intervention. Even in herbal medicine, you can still have the same mindset of, I'll just use herbs instead of drugs. It's still the same mindset of I'm intervening when something doesn't work well. And what we're trying to do is to increase kind of the native constitutive background resilience of the cell by keeping it going and exercised and strong. And lifestyle is a big part of that. Go ahead, Barb.
One thing that we were always taught, and you can correct me if you've heard something different, but we were always taught that 30% of how our health is from genetics, 70% is lifestyle. And so that 70%, you can kind of tip the scales by the choices that you make. And it's so important that we do realize, like you said, Jim, even before, this starts all the way back to childhood. Some of this stuff's set in play way back, habits and such things. So it's a real conscious effort. And it's hard. It took me 7 years and crying and praying and reading books to get off sugar. And we know that sugar fires the same receptor sites in the brain as cocaine does. And so it's very addictive. And so we have to think about, okay, it's not necessarily easy, but if we don't make the choices, nobody's going to make them for us. And our health cannot necessarily improve if we're just continually going down the slippery slope. Then not only are we going to possibly have health challenges one day, but it not only affects you, but it affects your family, it affects your finances, it affects your work. There's so many domino effects to making bad choices. And so I feel like we each have an inherent responsibility to not only think about just ourselves, but think about that domino effect of who are you going to affect by the choices you make today, tomorrow, in the future, and be responsible. Is it easy? No. Do we all sometimes make mistakes or have a day where we just treat ourselves? Sure. But if we are not responsible for our own health, then it's not fair to everyone else around us for what the consequences one day could possibly be.
I really like that thought. That's kind of that could get off into some politics too, I realize, but we do have a shared responsibility, and to be responsible for our own health, because it's not, if you say, well, I'm free to do what I want, it's like, well, but the consequences of those choices are going to wind up affecting other people. They wind up affecting health insurance, the utilization rates,
Yeah.
they wind up affecting everything. And so, I think people who are like-minded in this regard, they kind of understand this conversation, and it's about personal responsibility. There's an interesting phrase, and I actually put it in one of the books I wrote. And it's like, what we want to do is to act, not be acted upon. And this is about personal responsibility and agency and so forth. So I'd like to pivot just a little bit, and I'd like to go back and draw on your comments. You do adjusting of dogs, you do chiropractic care for animals. We've done several Redox 5 shows with some veterinarians and some horse, people in the equestrian area. And one of the things that comes up often is the idea that there is no placebo in the animal world. So maybe if you could maybe touch on that, because this would be kind of another point of reference for our listeners, anybody watching this, about what happens when you use this. I'm assuming you're doing something in that regard with animals. You correct me if I'm wrong, but could you go there for us?
Hey, real quickly, can you go ahead and give the disclaimer that this is for human consumption only, or Barbie, if you can go ahead. But we need to make sure that we draw that line hard, that this is for human consumption. How do you address that, by the way?
What I tell people is this is just my personal experiences with my animals. If you choose to try this, it's up to you. I cannot actually recommend things in my scope of practice. So I tell them, be sure and visit with your veterinarian for questions. And of course, if you choose to take them off any medications or something, that's between you and your veterinarian. What I do know is that animals have cells. And so I use it on my animals to help their cellular health. It's not going to heal, prevent, cure any veterinarian disease or sickness for an animal, just like a human. And ASEA does not market it for animal use. So that is definitely preliminary. Mm-hmm. But yes, some fun things I get to, you mentioned a good point. It's between what's here and here that people don't get well as quickly as animals do. And the placebo effect, like you say, they don't have a placebo effect. So whether it's chiropractic, whether it's cold laser, whether it's using a SIA, if it's going to work, it just works. And they don't have to think about all the reasons why it shouldn't or couldn't or doubt it. And so they just get better, which is pretty amazing. Now, that being said, I've had many paralyzed animals that have been dragging their back end in and such things. And we use cold laser on them. We use adjusting because they have disc problems just like human beings do. And I have definitely thrown redox molecules in the mix for that. We see them get better, and it's really exciting to see that. I've had cattle. I do show cattle. So I've had show cattle where I've just taken the Renew 28 and rubbed it inside their ears and just done that over and over. And then, of course, I do cold laser therapy on their lungs and things like that, and helps their breathing issues. I've got a couple of fun pictures. You guys want me to do some screen sharing here?
Yeah, I was holding out to ask you to do some of those because you'd mentioned you wanted to share. I did want to add a comment before you pull those up because we were talking about epigenetics. Ann-Louise Gittleman has for years talked about that subject, and she's wrote multiple books, and they not only include that subject that our DNA is not our destiny, so we do have control some of what's going to take place. Just because mom or dad has this or that itis doesn't mean we will. And it does play a part in that whole redox lifestyle. So all her books, which I've read everyone, talks about ASEA incorporated in lifestyle, and of course the Via line. And so she's a great proponent for ASEA. But yeah, please do share. I was eager when you first wrote me the share screen. I'm like, I want to see those. So this would be great. Thank you.
All right. And I just pulled a couple of just, for time. So I'll go ahead and share here. All right. So fittingly, I'm going to talk about, this is our, you guys may not have known it, but this is our mascot. This is Redox. So Redox came to us on my husband's truck. He was approximately 4 weeks old. They thought very sick kitty. Had eye issues. He had protruding rectum. He had diarrhea. He just was so unhealthy. And so what I started doing was taking the Redox and rubbing it on his eyes just with a cloth. And I sprayed with the ASEA spray bottle, the liquid ASEA on his rectal area. And then I would just do that over and over and over. And this was actually him in 1 week. So from this to this was incredible. And then this is about 3 months old. And of course, he's doing great and causing all kinds of problems around the house. But that's one fun one that I like to share. These two animals they're both rescues. They came to us. God sent them to us. This is Bo. He's a Great Dane. And this is Snoopy. And she is a Terrier Chihuahua mix through and through. And Snoopy came to us with a lot of skin allergies, a lot of bacteria growing on her skin, scratched, chewed her hair off, you name it. So she got Redox by syringe because she just refused to take it. And then we eventually got to where she'd lick it out of a bowl. And now I just put a syringe up to her mouth and they both come running to see when they can have their turn. But it took about 2 years with her getting ASEA, the liquid ASEA, before she went from 2 allergy pills a day and she's now down to a half, which is really exciting. So hopefully we can continue to make progress there. Bo, we just found him one day. We couldn't find owners, posted him all over the place. But he came to us with terrible dental issues. And the gums were unhealthy, the teeth were unhealthy. So we started spraying the ASEA in his mouth. And it didn't take but maybe 30 days to really help the gum issues. It was great to see them become pink again. And then his dental issues got real healthy again. So that was some exciting things. On a little more emotional side, some people may have seen this. This is my horse. Her name's Calico. And she had a long history. I've had her since she was 6 years old. She's 21 now, but she had a long history of gut issues. And the last episode that she had, she spent 5 days at a local vet. So I went over and would give her ASEA rectally, each day. I would do my adjusting, my laser, etc. And then she ended up, she still just wasn't turning around. So she went to Oklahoma City to an equine hospital and was there 5 days, and they just could not get her turned around. And so I'm crying to my husband and going, I got to go see my horse, because it's 3 hours away from us one way. So he drives me over there, and I take my ASEA, I take my gel. So I gave her ASEA 3 times in a 1 hour period while I was there. And I took the gel on her site where they had the IV in her neck. And I just applied and applied and applied. And I massaged and I adjusted and I lasered. And so we drove home because it just was not looking good. She wouldn't eat. The next day they called and they said, come pick up your horse. She's ready to go home. So we drove another 6 hours round trip and brought her home. And then she got ASEA every day for quite some time, and then is doing great. This incident right here was another one where we were out preparing trails for trail riding, and I had walked her down to a pond. We had a lot of drought in 2022, and it looked hard and dry. I had gotten off of her, which is fortunate, because I had a hold of her face, and she slid into the pond, and it flipped her around and sucked her down into this mud. And it was just like clay. We could not get her out. So she struggled and struggled. And you can see here where she just gave up. And so there's another guy, a good friend, that was helping me try to get her out. I went in front of her legs, dug all this clay out and got rid of it, talked to her, said, girl, you got one more try in you? Because I literally didn't know I was going to take my horse home that day. And all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me, one of my friends was praying behind us. And she came flying up out of that water and just, it was a God thing. But she had a lot of damage. She did injure her sacrum and her neck area. And it took, probably at least 4 months, maybe 5 months to get her somewhat recovered from that. And then I did try to ride her, and the injuries are just too severe to her pelvis. And this was a career-ending injury, unfortunately. But I have my horse. She's retired here, and so we get to enjoy her here. I do have a few human pictures on here. Would you like to see those?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is a client that had severe burns from hot tea coming out of a microwave, landed right in her lap and on her arm. On the arm, you can see the burn, and it's actually broke open the skin here and blistered. This was the front of the hip area, and this is the side of the hip area. It was very, very severe. You can see the change here, and we sprayed ASEA on. She was already an ASEA user, so knew to spray that on. So she started that right away. You can see these blisters, and they actually never broke open. They just dried up. And then once she was able to tolerate the Renew 28, we rubbed it on over and over and over. That was the healing, and from here to here. This to this was 3 weeks, which was pretty incredible. It's pretty fast recovery. This was a friend who, horse injury, fractured her scaphoid bone. And this injury occurred in March. And then she went to the doctor, had it x-rayed. I had her start using Renew 28 on her hand, just on the outside, before we even knew what had happened. We got her to order the Renew 28. I think she started that April 13th, and she had surgery on the 11th, started the Renew 28, 4 ounces a day on the 13th. This was the x-ray after surgery, post x-ray 426. And by 525, there's very little evidence of the fracture. You can see by this article, and also what her doctor told her, is it'd be 6 to 12 months after surgery for this to recover. And that
What was her age?
Her age was 61, I believe.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Slightly under.
And then I've got one more I'll share with you. This was 2 weeks. This was a great win for the clay mask. I have no idea. This is the inside of my thigh. I was reaching down. I had shorts on and trying to get Redox, the kitty, out from underneath the couch when he first came. I don't know what I got bit by, but I didn't even know I got bit till 2 days later, and my legs started stinging, and it had this huge redness around it. And so I applied the clay mask and thought, boy, if this is going to work, I hope it works now, because it was just burning so profusely. And once I did the clay mask, I would use the Renew 28, and I just did it over and over and over. This was a couple days into it, and it took 2 weeks, but then it all cleared up. But this was, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. But the clay mask and the Renew 28 is all I did. So that worked out pretty awesome.
Is that a bug bite?
Yeah, that's
maybe?
what she thinks.
You think it was a spider of some kind?
I think it probably was. Yeah. Yeah. But it never pitted out or anything. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes, those are exciting. You've seen all sorts of stories.
Real quick. Yeah, Barbie, let me stop the screen share if you don't mind.
Yes. Thank you.
See y'all better.
Okay, there we go. I'm a new patient. I'm coming in. Simply how Dr. Osler gave us a phenomenal descriptor. How do you explain to someone that doesn't have any idea what we're talking about? How do you explain what this stuff is and what it does?
I basically tell them that redox signaling molecules, or redox molecules, they are native to the human body. We are born with them. So they are important for every cellular function of our body. If we don't have redox molecules, we're dead. And we have to have enough of them for our cells to communicate with one another so that our body can repair when we have issues come up, or we can heal when issues come up. So after puberty, we start losing about 1% per year ability to even make enough. And so we never can make enough unless we replenish them in some fashion. Redox signaling molecules in the blue bottle is our answer to that. We can replenish by consuming them. We can rub them on by the gel, and we over time get them built up into the body because they do absorb. They're very small molecules and they get into the cells very easily. And because they get into the cells very easily, then they go in quickly. They act as an on-off switch to the cells. And then once the good cells expressions are turned on and the bad expressions are turned off, we have the ability to have better resilience to stress and better overall health over time. And so that's kind of the little spiel that everybody gets. And really each person that comes in, I kind of share some of my testimonies also.
Cool. Dr. Osler, can you explain why this is not in a drug category that it was going to be a pharmaceutical drug, and why it's not? And maybe, I don't know if this is too many things at one time, but it's just salt water, right? And Barbie, real quick, did you have an issue with two things? It's just salt water and the networking part of why is it delivered something that's more advanced than any other technology on the planet? Why is it coming via networking? How do you deal with that?
Well, I don't guess I really question it, because it's just like, that's what it was. Now, salt and water, how does salt and water work? That was the research part that, of course, I didn't really understand, but touring the corporate place really solidified that to where I could understand how it worked and drove that home. But the network marketing, I had been involved with one other network company. It didn't really work for me because it required way too much time and it was too complicated, but I did participate in it for 9 years. So it wasn't foreign to me, but I didn't really question the delivery method. It's like, that's what it was. So.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That was easy.
So Lee, I mean, this is more advanced than I'm assuming anything either of you two have seen in your practice.
Mm-hmm.
But why isn't it a drug, Lee?
Well, that's where this was headed. I mean, one of the things that really captured my attention was the backstory. The many years that this spent in development, not with ASEA, but with a biotechnology company that were basically fixing to make a drug with this, and they were just going to flip it, take the profits and go to the next bio research project. They had investors. I mean, it's very sophisticated out there today. Big pharma is kind of where these folks like to, to court and put things in front of. And so the backstory is that while this was in development to be a drug for some very significant health issues of the day, they could not get a what they call a lethal dose 50 or an LD50 clearance from the FDA. That was their stonewall because it wouldn't kill anything. And to get an FDA drug certificate, you have to establish how toxic it is. And this is not toxic. And so at any dose, nothing would die. And so that crashed their plan to be a drug. And they basically were beginning to fold when it was taken over by and purchased out by Vertus Norton, who was our founder. And he saw the potential in this of flipping this to the other side of the FDA, the supplement side, which is why we don't make claims. And this does not cure or treat. What we saw when Dr. Phillips was presenting some of those marvelous cases was the results of cellular function being improved, and we heal ourselves when that happens. So this became a supplement, and that's why we don't do the kind of level of testing that many people would love to see. But thankfully they didn't, because this now made it available to anyone. It's not a controlled substance. It's not under a physician's supervision. It's now stabilized. And it is being spread word of mouth, because these stories, you don't pick these stories up by holding a blue bottle from a store shelf. You go, oh, I know exactly what saline is. The reason why it's saline is because that's what it is. It's what we call electrolyzed saline, which means we fractionate or separate the molecules of salt mixed in water or saline to create a variety of reactive, bioactive molecules that, as Dr. Phillips said, are what our mitochondria are producing inside our cells. That's the native, innate, cell-friendly mechanism that we use to turn on those switches. And one of the things to emphasize in that is we're not doing such a good job as we get older at controlling these processes. That's what aging is all about. So our capacity to manage those switches properly, ideally or optimally, decreases. We believe at about 1% per year. And so that's 10% per decade. So if you're 70, and this kind of started happening at about puberish time, plus or minus, then you've already at age 70, you could calculate it. So I've lost 50%, of my capacity that I had when I was younger, and I could heal faster. Now I'm old, and when I fall down, I don't jump up and run as quickly, and it takes longer to recover. I'm more susceptible to the next virus that comes down the pike because I'm just susceptible. That's just natural. And so what we're doing is we're countering that by asking the cell every 2 to 5 to 6 to 8 to 12 hours, whatever your intervals are, we're asking the cells to up their game so that they can better weather the storm, that comes to them.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just going to comment about our new, the white papers just came available, and I know, Lee, you've known a little bit longer. Barbie, you just probably barely as well as myself, but how big is this, Lee and Barbie, to the future of people who share ASEA, the company, and of course to a new potential person to get on it? How are you going to incorporate now this greater validation, which I think is bigger than the Tarrant Lab study? Which one of you wants to share first?
The Tarrant Lab study that you referred to was a broad look at several pathway genes. These pathway genes are these redox switches. That's what turns on. That's the epigenetic control over the DNA that tells the cell what it needs to do to be resilient in the face of a problem. Personally, I'm sure Dr. Phillips would agree. The results of this study that we're referring to really didn't surprise me. I would have anticipated or expected it. I know the researchers doing it were surprised. But all you need to do is read 500 or 1,000 studies, and abstracts from the literature to just know how the cells work, to know that if you do these things, you're going to activate those pathways, and the natural connect the dots result is going to be elevation. So the study specifically talks about the increased NRF2 levels, which can translate into higher levels of glutathione. The NRF2, for those listening and not knowing, that's the name of the redox switch. And I like to think of that as a pattern. It's a prototype. There's hundreds and hundreds of redox sensitive switches throughout the cell, throughout the body. And so when you know that, you look at this study, and I think you used the right word, Anne, it validates. It validates what we kind of already knew, but the important part is that this was a third party. And so when a third party comes in and validates that, it gives you a solid rock that you can stand on, rather than just pulling studies together that extrapolate or connect the dots. We now have a structure/function study that validates that what we have does indeed do what we say it does.
Well,
And
real
important.
yeah, real quick on that too, Lee. Maybe you know more a little bit more about this, but when they were doing the studies, Bath out of England and then Western Sydney in Australia, they didn't believe the results.
They redid it.
They had to redo it. And we will have Tyler Norton on as our guest, by the way, next Friday, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit. But that's what's amazing. These universities
Going
all over the world are reaching out to us.
Yeah.
And going, we want to study what you have. And then Barbie, I just want to have you ever seen, because this is kind of where I had a hard time with my background as a stockbroker, that I've always have heard, if it's too good to be true, come on, guys. It can't be true. We all have heard that our whole lives. And I think all of us have a little bit of doubting Thomas in us. But when someone says, well, Jim, are you telling me that this thing works on everything that's alive, plants, animals, and humans? Have you ever seen this not work? Or is it, maybe that's not the right question. Will this always work?
Will work 100% of
Will
the
it
time.
work? Because that's hard because the medication doesn't do that. Maybe with animals it does, but nothing can work all the time. But yet that's what we say. This does.
Well,
Thoughts?
I can share with you some reverse experimentation to answer that question. And
Cool.
what I mean by that is, and my husband's probably going to kill me for saying this, but when he takes the redox signaling molecules, after a period of time, he had knee discomfort. His knee discomfort completely went away. And he has stopped, not once or twice or 3 times, but at least 4 times, stopped taking the molecules over the last 4 years. And every time, the knee discomfort comes back.
Sure.
And of course, the studies show within 8 weeks, if we don't take the molecules, our body still can't produce enough. So I use that example to people. We kind of reverse engineered our testimony there. So that's one. And I will say, I just had a recent, and I'm assuming, when I talked to you, Jim, today, I was up at the hospital working with a patient of mine that's a quadriplegic. And we had started him on the Redox molecules at his home, and of course the gel and everything. And when he came home in May, his legs were completely drawn up to his waistline and rotated to the side, and his arms drawn up, and he couldn't extend them out. So we did get him to the point where we could get his legs almost straight. And of course, they were still pretty rigid. His arms were starting to get more flexible, etc. Unfortunately, he had some health challenges in the last 2 weeks where he's had to be admitted to a hospital to get some antibiotics. And so I've been going to the hospital almost every day to work on him and chiropractically and do some therapy on him, as well as make sure we do wound care and things like that with him. But we had his some wounds on his bottom completely healed up, which he hadn't healed up from in over 2 years. And in the hospital, they broke open again. And so we've been working on those. And his grandfather asked me today, he's like, well, I don't understand. We're doing all the things again, and which the hospital had forgotten to cover. And that's whenever it started again. But I said, well, you know, we beat it once, we're going to beat it again. It's not near as bad. But I got to thinking when I drove away from there, he has not had his liquid ASEA since he's left the house in 2 weeks. Could that be a factor in his healing process? And of course, yes. So tomorrow, the grandfather and I are going to have a chat, you know, because we've got to get that back in his system. And so sometimes we learn through, you know, trial and error, but reverse testimonies. And just a note, yesterday, by the way, was the first day in a year and a half that this kid has been sitting in a chair with his legs at a 90-degree angle. And he's smiling. He got a haircut yesterday. I don't know. I became the chiropractor, the physical therapist, the wound doctor, I don't know. I'm doing all these things because it just melts my heart to see this progress. And what got me interested, the gentleman, you guys are going to know who I'm talking about. I'm drawing a blank right now. That was the paralyzed gentleman. And there's a testimony on him and why I'm drawing a blank on it. There was a physical therapist that helped him. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? I can't hear you.
Brendan Nichols.
Brendan Nichols.
Yes. Okay. So someone told me about
Schonberg.
him. So I reached out to him on Facebook, and he and I have been communicating through this case.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And we've become Facebook friends, but he has been such an instrument in just not giving up. And I'm like, you know, they first said, we know the legs are hopeless. We're just going to work on the arms, at least can work a wheelchair. And I said, oh, no. We're going for all 4 limbs. And today, when we were stretching his legs, it's the first day he could feel the twitches in his legs and the muscles. And I'm excited. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm in it for the long haul. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, how do you pull in the via line in your artillery? I mean, I notice you have it behind you.
Yes.
Do you pull that in right away, or where does that come into play?
It depends. I get a lot of people, interesting enough, with digestive issues, and I think it's because lifestyle is such an issue. And so the biome comes into play quite a bit. The source comes in behind that because people are not, including myself, eating enough fruits and vegetables and all their greens and all the good nutrients. Well, we know that they absorb at the cellular level, which means they're getting utilized by the cell. And so that's kind of my talking point. But I would say they don't come in as much as the ASEA and the Renew. We do the clay mask for several things. We even have vascular issues that on the legs and things that we've used the clay masks on. You know, if they have sunburns, we use the clay or the Renew 28 on. So there's all kinds of things for those. But my main staples are the ASEA and the Renew 28 most of the time, and then the biome comes in right behind that.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
super.
Hey, Lee, why don't you
Great.
close us out? We are at the top of the hour. Barbie, this has been awesome. Lee, wrap it up. Put a pretty bow on it.
Well,
It's just finished Christmas.
that's fitting for this season. We're so grateful for Dr. Barbie and coming on and spending an hour with us. We hope this has been meaningful. There have been, several comments in the chat that have expanded on some of this and guided our thoughts, perhaps. But we appreciate you spending time with us, and for everybody watching or
Yep.
who will watch this in a recorded time, we encourage you to learn more about this. That's the purpose of these Redox 5 programs, is to kind of explore some of these. Again, we emphasize that we are not treating, curing, or diagnosing anything. We're making cells work better, and we heal from the inside out when the body knows when it has what it needs to take care of itself. So we thank you, Dr. Phillips, for being with us. And those who are watching, if you've got further questions, please talk to those people who invited you to this.
Yes.
Get your questions answered. We made the comment earlier. You need a 3 to 4 to 6 month run with us. You didn't get sick, from a chronic degenerative disorder. You don't get sick overnight. You might have a sudden heart attack, but that's been working for a long time. So that's what this is about, is cellular health. So again, thank you for coming in, Jim.
That's
The
great.
recording will be available at redoxmatters.com within an hour or so. We always make 2 suggestions, please, like Dr. Phillips, know where to go to get proper research done. And we recommend get back to the person that invited you to this call. Also go to discoverredox.com. Discoverredox.com is an excellent source with all the products that we have. And like Barbie said as well, is get back to the one that invited you. 2 cautions: don't go to Google to get research. They do have Google Scholar, good research there, but be careful of some people, like I call them lovingly, negative poo-poo heads, that will put something out negative on this technology, and you have to wonder, why would they do that? And then number 2, be cautious when you go out to any other website to purchase the product. We do not market this product through any other website, but through our distributors, through our associates. So please respect that. And Barbie, I did want to touch, but we don't have time. But as far as the business aspect of it, I'm assuming you are making this a business venture. So
Absolutely.
like we always say, Barbie, hey, if this is real, it is. Who deserve to know about it? And it's everybody.
That's
And
right.
if we don't tell them, but it's up to us to tell everyone and to tell the whole world. 14-year-old company in 33 countries. So, guys, we are extremely excited for next week. Alan Noble did a phenomenal interview with our founder. Was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago? And we're going to dig deeper. So it's going to be, let's call it a part 2 of the rest of the story with our founder. And you do not want to miss that next Friday at 8 p.m. Central and 9 p.m. Eastern and all the other time zones. So, guys, thank you. God bless.
Thanks again, Barbie.
Thank you so much.
You're
I
awesome.
really do appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Y'all
for
have a
having me.
wonderful, have a
Thanks,
wonderful
Lee.
New Year's.
Happy
Thanks,
New Year.
Thanks, Lee.
2024. Here we come.
See you next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.